Okay, so welcome to week 3 of the workshops. So the first 2 workshops kind of got you started on how to use Git, RStudio, GitHub Desktop. And this week, I'm going to go into how you use GitHub, some of the key things you want to know about when you're getting started. And then I'll show you an example of how typical groups actually work on GitHub. And so what I found that is that, when you Google like how to use GitHub and how to use Git, it's really oriented to computer programmers and people who are developing code, and they work a little bit differently than we work as scientists. And so the way that we'll use GitHub is a little different. So I'm going to show you the typical way that teams would work. Now, this is different if you have something that's a bit closer to an actual software, big software project with, many team members. Then you would use more the computer, software developers mode. But I'm going to do more the scientist mode. Okay. So for those of you online, if you didn't see the link to the notes for today, I just posted those again. And as usual, during the lecture, just throw your questions in the chat. And everyone, if you have an answer, go ahead, jump in there. I'll be kind of glancing over there, and we'll address that as I go along too. And then at the end of the lecture, I stay on for another half hour. Any questions that you have, I'll talk about those. Okay, so topic this week is some basic GitHub skills for either working personally or working in a team. And then I'm going to show you, like I said, I'll show you how to do it. And then I'm going to show you also a few more skills for working with Git, like how to revert changes. That's a real nice feature. And then a few tips. Things I'm not going to cover during lecture, happy to cover these afterwards. Working from the command line, pull requests, and then more talking about branches. I do want to cover that kind of at the end and sort of the after session. If anybody is at the point where they think they might need to use these, then we really need to talk about what's going on with branches and how you need to change your workflow, your normal workflow, in order to not to conflict with the way that branches work. And if you're curious about this, you read this part here. There are things I know that the way that you work, you probably click on your file folder and you interact with your files just from your file folder, and that's going to be a problem when you're working with branches. And you probably also think that timestamps have meaning. Most of us do. We use them, we sort files by that, and that's not really going to work once you start working with branches. So there's some key things to understand. Okay. All right, so with that, I'm going to get going. Oh, wait, no, I have one more prep thing. So if any of you on the call are using RStudio Cloud, if you have an account set up, if some point during the lecture or after the lecture, if you could click on this link here, and when it opens, click the Build tab and click Install and Restart. I need to make sure if that's working for folks before I get to week 5. And I'm working with RStudio for kind of a weird feature of how when you click on these links that I've created, it's kind of using up my project hours in a weird way. So I'm trying to resolve that with RStudio before I get to week 5. So if you have that set up, click on that at some point and just run this little code. That would help me out. Okay. So let's get to these key skills. So I'm going to be able to play along here. I'm going to go to our okay. So this is our organization. So if you click the classroom link, you're already on here. If those of you who haven't, then you're just watching as we do this. But those of you who are already in can sort of play along while I'm doing this. And related to that, when you get on here, our workflow workshop, those of you who are already in, if you go to Teams, you'll see this. If you click there, you'll see the info that I'm posting. So this is how I'm emailing the group about things instead of using email. And secondly, some of you may have gotten an invite in your email. I see that some of you didn't click it. I'm going to go one more time and re-invite you. If you missed it, if you don't, that's fine. You can just ignore it. Yeah, so for those of you who have a pending invitation, and if you want to get on, just go ahead and click that, and you'll be able to see this and see the discussions. All right, so let's look at the issues feature and how that is used in a project. We're going to start off kind of simple. I'm just going to go to this week 4 here. Did I do it in week 4? Let's go to a different one. Sorry, I think I did it in filter, public. Okay, let's look at. There we go. Okay. So if you click on this week 1 repository, you're going to see here these issues. So this is how you can track things that need to be taken care of in your repository, and you can have discussions about issues there. And it's really easy. You click here, and then to create an issue, you just click this new issue, and then you just say what it is. You know, and it can be really anything, whatever. How it's really up to you how you use this. You know, a lot of people use it kind of like a to-do list, rather than just like bugs and issues with the code. And I'm going to add some documentation. So this is I'm using it kind of like a to-do list, and then these are the files I want. Okay, so that's it. And then I go here, and I can see what the things are on my to-do list. I can, if I'm working in with a group of people, it can be helpful to assign things to people. You don't have to do that. Like I use issues all the time on projects where I'm the only person working on it, so then I'm never using the assign feature. But if there's a group of you, you can use this assign and add people to it. When we get to the next part where I show you how to collaborate, we're going to add people, collaborators to a repository, and then we would have multiple names. Right now, I'm the only name on this as a collaborator on this particular repository, so you only see my name. Okay. The other thing that I find really useful personally is labels. So they give you some stock labels, but you can add whatever label is useful for you. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's for different, say populations or something, is issue related to a different population that's in your, associated with your repository, a fish population or something. Yeah, whatever you want, you can customize that. That's really helpful. And then later when you go back here, you'll see your list. You're going to be able to filter on labels. So let's see all the ones that I categorize as a bug. So then you see that. Once you have a lot of, if you have a lot of issues, that's really helpful. Okay, so those are the two features of issues that I find really helpful: the label and lesser so the assignee. Some sort of tips about using issues that I've found. It's really helpful if you add code that replicates the problem. If it is like a bug problem, I often don't want to do that because I'm like, just put the bug there. I'll remember how to replicate it. And I assure you, your future self will be really frustrated with you for not putting in some code that replicates it. So for code, you don't have to remember it. I think if you roll over these, like one of these here is insert code, so it'll format it for you. You don't have to do that. It just looks a little, I would say nicer, but mainly it helps you highlight where the code is. So when you've got a lot of like discussion going on, it's really easy to see where the code is and isn't. So I find that really helpful. Okay. So another kind of tip with using these is this number here. So when you post a fix, so you're doing a commit, say, well, I'm in GitHub Desktop, so I'm back on my, my local repository, and I'm doing a commit, I can reference $2, and it will show that it has to do with that issue. Okay, so somebody had a question. How does issues fundamentally differ from discussions? So discussions would be within a team, and they're not specific to a repository. Issues are very specific to a repository, whereas discussion would be broader. Like you could reference issues in different repositories. If you do GitHub help for issues, it'll show you how to reference issues from different repositories. So you might imagine, like in the team, in the discussion part, like we're going here. So here, I'm within my team here, and I could have multiple teams. Like imagine you could have different projects you want to be discussing, and these projects involve multiple repositories. So this is the feature of discussions, is it's not specific to a repository. It's specific to like this organization that you've created. I'll discuss organizations in a moment. But like in this discussion here, you can do this kind of, I think it's either @ or number sign. If you look at the help for issues, it'll tell you how to reference issues across different repositories. So you can imagine you can have a discussion where you're talking about issues across different repositories and how you're going to deal with them, and everybody kind of chime in on that. Okay, let's go back to here. Oops, repositories. Week 1. Okay, so let me show you a little more realistic, a much more realistic example of this. Okay. Let's do GitHub Holmes. So I'm just going to show you one of mine where I use issues a lot. So it's this package that I have, and so you can see how. So this one is used. You can see some different names here. So this is an example where this repository is for an R package. That it's a public R package, and in the package information, it has the links for bugs or issues. And so anyone who's using it can post an issue. So this is an example of the public posting, something. So here's just like the latest example, somebody's, trying to replicate something, and then, I respond back, here's what you need to do. Okay. So that's really, really helpful. And then also for, So again, this is a little more complicated example where I have different releases. So I have issues that are associated with an upcoming version, and then so this is a future version, and then I have things like for okay, so this was all the things that I wanted to deal with for the last version that came out. So these are all closed. I finished that version, and then I think right. So these are the open ones. This is a new, these are two things I want to get done with for that version. So it's really helpful when you have a much more complex project. And especially, like, you imagine something really, really big, you're in a pretty big team, it's kind of hard to keep track of all the things that need to get done and who's doing what. Issues can allow you to track all that really nicely. Okay. So those of you who have not received your invitation, just ping me over email, and I'll check to see that send me your email me, and then give me your GitHub username, and I'll give you a direct invitation. Okay, releases. This is a really fantastic feature of GitHub, I find. And you might think of releases as being something like you have a package release, but I want to show you an example, a different example. So let's go here. Okay, so here's an example. So this is a software package, and you look at these releases, and this is what you would think of as a release for a version of a software package. So these are official releases. People can go and they can install them from this release. Okay, so they can, install all the info, go back to all the past releases. You can go and using the link for this, you could install any version that you wanted. So like if I, for some reason, needed to go back in time and reinstall a past version of this software, I can. So that's easy. But let me show you another way that I've used releases that I find really handy. So my repositories. Okay. So this is a paper, my latest paper, and it's private because it's paper. And what I did here is kind of to be able to see the status of the paper at different stages. I would create releases for each revision. And it's very easy for me to go back in time if I need to. First off, put all the notes of what was going on there. If you look under this assets, it is a zip folder of the status of the repository at that release. So it bundles it all up, kind of backs it up for me. And then if you go here, when I'm in my repository on my local computer, I could check out a prior version and see the status of the repository. So I can see, like, think of it like, let's say it was a report that you're working on and you wanted to see, oh, wow, what did things look like before we had that big data update? Then I could check out a prior version, and my file system will then look exactly like it did at the moment of that release. And then when I'm done, I can switch back. Warning, this is a very big warning before you go jump in and start playing with releases and switching back in time. It's going to change all your timestamps. Whenever you use checkout, it will do that. Git doesn't, timestamps don't really mean something to Git, so it doesn't really pay attention to them. I will, if this is an issue for you, there's a way to recover them. And I can talk about that later if anybody has an interest. Okay. Oh, so someone asked, for something like a paper, do you still keep this in your Documents GitHub folder? Yes, absolutely. Repositories are special things, and I keep all of them within the same folder. I have it labeled GitHub. It could just be, you know, Git repositories, but I just find it helpful for me to find things later, to have my GitHub ones in one place, my GitLab. Sometimes I use that in the past. I'll have those a different one. That preference is just so I can find things later, but it's very important that you not mix your repositories, Git repositories in with your other folders that are not Git repositories. Yeah. Okay, so releases. How do you create a release? Super easy. So let's go here. Okay, so I have this, and I just click Releases, create a new release. You need to give it a name, a tag name. You can use anything you want. It's really up to you. Just think of it like a label, a name of this release. You don't have to say use like version. Absolutely not. Call it whatever you want. But it is common for people to label their releases in numerical order. You don't have to. Okay. So this is my version 1. This is so there we go. And now we have this archive exactly as it was at that time. So this is one way to, like, essentially, if you had like, you know, your, if you're using a repository to share data, and you might have your data release 1.0, and then, you know, next month or next year, you'll have that update to that. So that's your new release. You can use it like that. Yes. Thank you, Megzi. Yes, there's all these versioning guidelines. If you are releasing packages, don't just jump in and start making up your versioning guidelines. I did say, yeah, you can use whatever you want, but I was meaning that more in terms of, like, people use repositories for different things. You might use it for your paper or just for, you know, a little project or something. In that case, you know, use whatever you want. But if you're doing packages for release, there are some standards that people use, and using those standards, like in the link that Megzi just shared, is very helpful for your users, because then your version numbers mean something. Okay. All right. Organizations. So let's go on to, sorry, I keep having to pause because WebEx when it does this little drop-down thing as me as the presenter, it keeps covering up my tabs here. Okay, so let's go here, and I'm going to click over here, and you're going to see my organizations. Okay, so I spend a lot of time on GitHub. I have a lot of organizations. So, and the way that I use organizations is that each organization is like a kind of a similar types of repository. So, for example, I made this organization, and that is associated with this workshop. When I'm done with this, I will delete this organization because it's just for the workshop. You know, here, these are all repositories having to do with the time series course that I teach and this package for time series analysis. Okay, so within an organization, number of nice things. First off, once you've created a organization, you can create a nice little landing page for it. I'm going to be showing this in later weeks, how you create these nifty landing pages. It's very simple, just a few clicks. So this is the landing page for this organization. You can see it has its own little URL here, and then now people can access the information in this organization, all the repositories, in a nicer fashion with more information, rather than just directing people to this, which is not really kind of guiding them to how to use the information in this. The other thing is that within an organization, you can have the set group of people who are working on the repositories in that organization, and then you have your teams within that. Okay, let's go back here. And then you see I can have a different organization here and have a totally different group of people who are working on this set of repositories and the project associated with this organization. So it's very easy to create organizations. Just go here and just click New Organizations, and then just go through that and immediately just creates it. Okay, so I also have like my personal work in different organizations. So like work that I do that's associated with, one type of work that I do is going to be in a different organization versus another one. So I'm not necessarily myself using organizations to have teams. I also use it just for my own personal code. Like all my teaching repositories are in a different organization versus all my work that would be related to forecasting. So you can say I've got fish forecast versus RWorks tutorials. So I separate those because it's very different types of work. Okay, great. And I think, so I showed you the organizations, showed you the link to get to that, and then briefly talked about showing you how to do discussions. And you'll just see that if you click on the teams, organization, sorry, I go here. Again, you click on your teams, and then click on that, and that's under the team that you create, you can have your discussions. And when you create teams, then you can, invite people to the different teams. So you can imagine, like here we have 47 people in this organization. I could create, a team of 6 people, and they can have their own little discussion there. So there's a lot of flexibility in that. Okay. So the landing page, I would just want to show you today a really quick way, or a really basic landing page for a repository and how to create that. Kind of start simple, and then in later next week, we're going to get into our Markdown documents, and then we'll do a little more complicated example of a landing page. So let's go here to these repositories. Filter by click. See. Pretty sure they were here. No, it's not here. Sorry. Remember where I did it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to show you an example of how you create a simple landing page based on your Readme file. So here's my Readme file. And if I go to Settings, and I scroll, you kind of scroll way down, and then you've got this thing that says GitHub Pages. Click that here. And when I first started working with GitHub Pages, it's really confusing what to select. What I'm showing here is the simplest version, where it's just going to make it using my Readme file, because I don't have anything else there except a Readme file. I'm pretty sure if I had an index.html, it would use that. But I don't. All I have is a Readme, so that's what it's going to use. And so if I click None, which is if you go to your own package, what you're going to see is None. So that means that there is no kind of landing page. But if you create main, then it's going to use your the main branch, and then root means just the main code that you see. That is sort of it's not any folders, and then it's going to look there for your Readme. So that's like your simplest thing that you would see. You don't have any extra folders. Like I said, next week we'll start doing some more complicated examples. So what happens is it creates this link here, and then it's going to take a little while to process it. So it's going to show you that link immediately, and then you're going to jump on it, and you're going to get a 404, and you'll be like, Eli, it didn't work. No, just wait. Maybe you have to wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But then you'll come back and you'll see it's made this nice landing page from the Readme file. And that I find that super helpful for anything that I'm sharing with people. It's a lot more helpful for them to just see the Readme. I can give them all the info they need to how to use my the data or the package or whatever I'm sharing with them, rather than sending somebody to the raw repository, which it has all this, extra stuff going on there that I really don't necessarily need somebody to see. Okay, so now I'm going to jump into showing you how you set things up to start collaborating in a small group. I see I have here this pro tip, GitHub Actions. So if you are wondering, for those of you who've worked on GitHub a lot, if you've heard about GitHub Actions, but you've been like, what is that? What's going on there? How do I set it up? I put a really simple example for you in this week 4. So read those instructions and then play around here if you want to see how an example of how you can use GitHub Actions. They're pretty easy. Okay, so let's go into collaborating on something. And I'm going to I'm going to do it from the start so you can see the whole process. So first off, I'm going to create a repository for us to collaborate on, our little team here. So I'm not going to use a template, I'm just going to be week 3. And then, so I don't have to put this here, but I will. Demo, collaboration. In most situations, I would be doing it private, probably, or, you know, if it's in a work setting, I would probably be working on, you know, an internal GitHub server. So at Northwest Fisheries Science Center, we have an internal one that we'd be using. But I'm just teaching, so I'm just going to click public here. And yeah, public or private, I mean, it really depends on kind of what you're doing on there. Okay, so I always want to initialize with a Readme, and with the .gitignore, typically I am going to add that. You don't have to. It's telling GitHub what to ignore from the files, the local files that you have on your system. And since I usually work in R, I'm going to do the R. Okay, I'm not going to choose a license. Okay. Great. So now I have this repository that we're going to collaborate on, and then I need to go into settings, and I go manage access. Oh, great. This is not what I want you to do. I'm sorry. Ah. Oh, come on. Okay, just a sec. Okay, we're back. Okay, so now I can add some course here. So I could, because I'm in an organization and we have teams, I could invite an entire team to this, but I'm going to just show you a more typical way that I might do this, which is I'm just going to add a couple people onto here. Sorry, I'm looking up a couple of you. Okay, so just picking people from the from the group. So maybe, you know, Damaris and I. Okay, so I'm going to add 4 reefs there, and then going to add see, you need to know the name. There we go. Okay, so I needed to click invite teams or people. Now I can add Abigail. Okay. So that's typically what you're going to do. You add, so I've got 2 people here that are now have write access. And then now the three of us can contribute to this. And so now it's all set up. We can just work on it. We have write access. We can all create files and edit files and push them up. So that might seem like it's just going to create problems. Like, oh, you're guaranteed to have conflicts where one person's editing a file and another person is working on that same file. So if you do go onto Google and you learn about, how to work with Git and GitHub, it's going to talk about forking things and pull requests and, doing your branches and then merging things back in. And in my experience, most of you collaborating in a small team are not going to run into those troubles. You can just do things pretty simply by just adding people onto the repository, just like I just did, under Settings, and then Manage Access, and then all of you are just pushing up to this repository. So let me show you a real example of this. So let's go here. Okay. So I teach a course with Mark Sherrill and Eric Ward at the University of Washington. And this is the website for our course. Here it is. So this is what students are going to every day. We're putting all our labs on there, all our lectures on here. The three of us are on this repository constantly while we are working on the course and updating files. Okay. If you look at the history here, you will see how, you can see what I was doing, go down. This is kind of afterwards. I was, putting on things. But now this is during the course. Here's, Mark rebuilding the site, and then Eli doing some more stuff, and then Eric doing some stuff. You can see these are all happening like pretty close in time. And yet, it's really, really uncommon for us to have conflicts. All we have to do is make sure that when we start to work, that we do a pull. And then the second thing that we have to do is that we give the others a heads up if we're working on files that the others might be working on. So for us, that would be like, I don't know, the index page. That is like the main page. That is potentially one we'd both be working on. We'd all be working on. So we just or if we're doing a whole bunch of work on the whole repository, we just say, hey, heads up, I'm really doing a bunch of stuff on the repository today. Can you guys hold off? Don't work on it. And that works fine, even though we're constantly working on this. And the reason I think it works fine is that often, the way that scientists work, I've observed in my own project and observed in other projects, is we divide up our tasks. So like in the lectures here, we're not all working on the same lecture. I'm working on lecture 1, Mark's working on lecture 2, and we can both be like doing tons of stuff on our own lecture with not conflicting with the other at all. And it's totally fine to be working on two different things and then merge them up because there's not a conflict because we're working on separate things. The conflicts only happen when we're both working on the same file at the same time. Then you get into merge conflicts. And if you do get into a merge conflict, in my experience, is if you're communicating in your team, these conflicts are pretty minor, and you can use the tools that I showed you last week on how to deal with a merge conflict in GitHub Desktop, right? So it's going to give you the option of do you want to use the one that's on the remote, do you want to use the one locally, or you can say, no, let's fix it in RStudio, and it's going to show you, using those tags I talked about last week, where the problems are. Is it possible to invite people to work on projects in GitHub who do not have GitHub accounts? No, you cannot. You do need to have a GitHub account. Yes, you can give read-only access to things. So, and for those of you who are, well, all of us, we're here at NOAA, be aware that when you are working on sort of NOAA enterprise grade official things, that you cannot have someone from outside of NOAA have push permissions. They can't push right in. You can collaborate with them. It's fine to collaborate, but there are rules about allowing someone to be able to immediately push. So you'd have to have a system for, they would do a pull request, which means they're suggesting a change, and then you have a process for reviewing that. Okay. Can you see whenever someone is working on a specific file? No, you cannot see that because that is happening on their local computer. What you could see is looking at the history, and you could see that, say, Eli has been doing some commits, pushing things up. So you can see when I'm working on it that way. I think also like the insights, you can kind of see when things are happening. But if the person is working locally and they're not committing things and pushing this up to GitHub, then you have no way to know that they're doing it. For me personally, you would definitely know when I'm working on it because I'm constantly like committing, and I push pretty quickly, usually, unless like it's, you know, something, you know, like I'm trying to debug a function, and I'm kind of breaking it. Maybe that takes me a few days to do that. So then maybe there'd be a pause. Okay, great. All right, so more Git skills. So I want to show you how to revert changes that you make. If that you make a change and then you realize, no, I don't want to do that. I want to get rid of that. So let's go. Let's see what I got here. Actually, I can just do this in GitHub Desktop. So let's go recent. Let's go to week 2 here. So Paul, you don't see if people pull, but yes, if they push when they quit, yes, you would see what they are up to. That's also a nice feature because you can find out, you know, instead of asking someone, hey, we have this issue, have you fixed that? Are you working on that? You just go onto the repo and you can see if they've pushed any changes. Okay, so here I'm on this repository, and I'm going to go here. I don't have any current changes, but let's get some changes. Okay. Okay. So I want to do this work in this week 2 right here. Okay. right? Okay, well, this is an example of branches. Oh, okay, great. Okay, so that was an example of, so what's going on here? This is just a real-life example of kind of how branches can kind of mess things up. So what had happened while I was thinking about branches, I decided to try to create an example where something bad happens. And so what I did is I deleted all the files in the branch. And then you saw, and I had forgotten to switch back over to main after I was playing with that. And you saw our studio said, hey, where did that project go? It doesn't exist anymore. And that's because I deleted it on that branch. And I'd forgotten to go back to main and sort of recreate it. Remember, branches are not this alternate sandbox that you're working in. It's truly changing your file system so that the project file that our studio needed was not there. So now, go back. Now I can open this here. Open. It's still not there. I did something. I really put something into that. Okay, I'm going to show you with another example here. Should I use? Okay, I'll just use this. This is the repository for the class. Okay. So now I'm going to create a change in this, and then I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so let's just create a file here, an R script, and then so now when I go over here, and now I'm going to change to this repository for the class. Okay, so in this case, I haven't committed the change. You can see it over here if we look at the file. So I've got this file delete.r, so it's there. Now I'm going to go here, and I'm going to right-click and say discard changes. So I'm going to do that, and it's just going to get rid of it. So I'm not going to do that yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to add some more things to this. First, I'm going to commit this. So I'm going to go here and commit this change. Okay, the reason I'm doing this is because when I delete things, it's going to delete it back to the last commit. So this is showing you why, like I do commits all the time, because if I need to revert something, I don't want to revert back to where I was at the beginning of the day. I probably just want to revert maybe an hour or so of work, or just the last thing that I was doing. So now I did that, and then I'm going to add something here. A couple more minutes. All right. So now when we go here, now we see those changes. And all I need to do to revert, in this case, say discard changes, and it says yes. Discard. Okay. Go back here. And now you can see it got rid of those changes. Okay. So let's do it again. Okay, so that was the case I hadn't committed those changes yet. So here, let's commit these. I'm just going to stick with the default here, and I update that. Okay. And now, what I do to get rid of it is I go into history, because these are changes that haven't been committed yet. They haven't been put in the record. This is the history, and I can still just go here and say revert changes and commit. There we go. And you can see, and now it reverted, it went back. So it's just like really easy to do. Just go back one commit. That's just really easy. Okay, so it looks like we are at 11 a.m. Perfect. Okay. So I just, last thing I wanted to just show you that I have on here is recovering a single file. Sometimes when you do a commit, you've modified a whole bunch of files and you just kind of got lazy and you just did, let's select all and just say a bunch of changes, and you commit all those. And then you decide, oh no, I need to revert one of those files. I made a mistake there. I want to get rid of everything I've done. And you can do that. This gives you the instructions. It can be a bit of a hassle. So I typically don't do it this way, honestly, because as you can see, the steps are a bit of a hassle. Often, so what I'm doing is first I'm making commits really often, and then I would then compare. You can do on GitHub, or you can do it through GitHub Desktop. You can compare versions, and then I would just kind of try to recover manually that one single file. And then I'd kind of kick myself for being lazy and doing a multi-file, a huge multi-file commit. And then I'll be good for a while and won't do it until I get lazy again and then run through having to recover a single file. But it is possible to run through a single file. And that reminds me, the very last thing before I turn off the recording that you should know how to do is how to get to the terminal if you needed to run a command at the command line for Git. There are a few different ways you can do it. First, just open up a terminal. Okay? And the key here is that you need to cd to can't find it. Anyhow, you need to change to the repository that you're working from, and then you can issue the command. Now, I always forget exactly how to do my path because I'm switching from Mac and PC all the time, but there's some easy shortcuts. Okay, first off, if you're in, if you've told RStudio where your Git is, okay, if you told RStudio where Git is, and then you do that by going Tools, Global Options, right here, and then click the Git SVN. Right here, if you told it where your Git is, then you can interact with Git. You're not interacting with GitHub, you're just interacting with Git. So if you've done that, then you will see this, you can use this tab here and then use this cog. It's really buried, but it's that cog there, cog, and then go to shell. It'll just open up your terminal, but the nice thing is that it is at the, it's taking a little while, but it is there. When it does that, it's going to open it up in the right directory, so you can see it's in the right place. So that makes it quicker. If you don't have those linked up, then in RStudio Desktop, you're going to have an option somewhere here of, I'm not seeing it on here. It's on my Mac, and it's somewhere in here. Maybe I haven't updated my RStudio desktop on my PC yet, but there should be an option up here to open a terminal also. Okay. All right, so I am going to stop the lecture recording.